She didn't whisper it. She tore the air apart with it. "Don't come near me!" my daughter screamed, her voice cracking the wedding hall like a glass shattering on marble. Laughter strangled mid-breath. The string quartet froze, boughs suspended in the air. Even the chandeliers seemed to tremble. I stood there, the antique pocket watch slipping from my hand, its chain biting into my palm. My chest locked. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. She had never looked at me with such fire. Not once, not ever. Then the best man leaned in, his lips brushing her ear. Whatever he said, it hardened her eyes to steel. She turned away, deliberate, final. And in that instant, I knew. She hadn't come here to celebrate. She had come to end something. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. The leftover cake was still on the table, but nothing felt sweet. Sunlight slanted across the kitchen tiles, too bright for the kind of morning it was. The streamers were still half hung in the doorway, one end having fallen overnight, now dangling like a limp accusation. A single pink balloon bobbed in the corner, each gentle sway a quiet mockery. The coffee maker sputtered, its timer doing its job, even if nothing else in this house was. I reached for the mug, my old ceramic one, the one with the faded, Hajon dad print my daughter had painted when she was 9. It had a small chip now, right at the rim, where my mouth landed. Even that felt deliberate. I sat at the kitchen table, where breakfast used to be laughter and orange juice. Now it was just the ticking of the wall clock and the quiet hum of betrayal. I hadn't slept. Not really. Just sat in the dark for hours. The sound of her voice from the wedding replaying in my skull like a broken record. "Don't come near me." I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd knock on the door. Say something. Anything. But all night nothing. Not even the light under her door. And then there was the watch. The antique pocket watch lay in the center of the table, exactly where I dropped it last night when I got home. Its gold face glinted dully under the morning light. That watch had survived decades, my father's hands, my hands, meant for her husband's, meant to pass on something solid, something with weight. Now, it sat like an orphan. Footsteps creaked above. The floorboards I'd installed myself groaned beneath her as she moved. Familiar sounds that used to bring comfort, now they just pressed down on my chest. I heard her door open. Her steps came down the stairs, light, quick, uncaring. Then the hallway, then the kitchen doorway. She didn't pause, didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I'll call the caterer today," she muttered into her phone as she entered. "He better give us half back at least. I don't care what the contract says." She wore leggings and a hoodie from some yoga studio. Her hair was tied up, no trace of last night's makeup, just the icy clarity of someone who'd made peace with a decision. She opened the fridge, didn't look at me, didn't even flinch. "Tell them the venue still owes us a cleaning deposit too. I'm not paying for their mistake." She shut the fridge, opened a drawer, grabbed a granola bar. Still no eye contact. I sipped the bitter coffee. The mug rattled slightly in my hand. Not from tremor, from restraint. She finally turned toward the table, toward the watch. For a moment, I thought she saw it. Her eyes flicked over it, then past it like it was dust. She walked out of the room, still talking. "Yeah, he's still here. No, I don't think he's leaving yet." That one landed. The door clicked behind her, no slam. Just that surgical little click. Precise. Final. I sat alone again. Not just in the room. In everything. I looked down at the watch. I had polished it yesterday morning, rubbing it with the old cloth from my drawer. I remembered smiling as I did it, thinking about how it might look, clipped to the groom's vest. About how proud my late wife would have been. And then I thought about that moment, when I held it out yesterday, hand trembling, heart full, and the groom never even turned to take it. Just laughed, said, "Oh, that's cute," and handed it to one of his groomsmen like it was a stage prop. I had held onto it all night, clenched it in my fist so tightly the chain left little lines across my palm. Now it just sat there, useless, Unclaimed. A door slammed upstairs. Probably hers. Probably nothing. Still, it made me flinch. I reached out, touched the watch gently, then slid it toward me. The metal felt cold, like a warning. I tucked it into my pocket, the weight of it sinking against my thigh, like a lead stone. A part of me still hoped irrationally that she would say something, that she would come back in, pretend it was a mistake, a joke, a misunderstanding, that the girl I raised, the one who used to fall asleep on my chest while I read the newspaper, still lived somewhere inside her. But no voice came, no footsteps, no apology. Instead, I sat with the silence. Let it settle in the creases of the curtains and the corners of the room. I stood, took my empty mug to the sink, rinsed it in quiet, let the water run longer than needed, anything to keep the noise going. Outside, a car horn honked once. A dog barked. Life continued. But something inside this house, inside me, had cracked. As I turned to leave the kitchen, her shadow crossed the wall behind me. Just a flicker. Just enough to know she was there. She didn't say a word. She didn't look back. She didn't look back. The mail came, but it wasn't addressed to me anymore. 3 envelopes slid through the slot and landed on the hardwood floor. I bent down to pick them up, already bracing for bills. But what I found made my stomach turn. 2 were addressed to my daughter and her fiancé, first names only, last name already changed. The third, it was my electricity bill, but the account name had been altered to a shared listing, not mine alone anymore. I stared at it for a long time, the corners of the envelope curling in my grip. The clock ticked behind me, the same rhythm as the pocket watch in my jacket, constant, relentless. I could feel it thudding against my chest as I moved toward the kitchen. They were already there. She sat at the table, laptop open, face lit with morning sundae. He stood behind her with a cup of coffee, my cup, the one I used every morning for the past 20 years. I stopped at the threshold. "I see the mail's here," she said flatly, not even glancing up. I held up the envelopes. "My name's missing." Her fiancé laughed. "Well, it's our house now, isn't it? Figured it's time the paperwork caught up." I didn't move. "It's my house." "Not for long," he said, smiling as he sipped. "We've been meaning to talk to you about that." She closed her laptop gently. "We'd like to make it official." I felt the shift before they even finished. "We're getting things in place to move forward," she continued. "We want to renovate, make it ours. And the legal stuff, your name being on everything, it just complicates things." My throat tightened. "I'm not dead," I said quietly. "No one said you were," he smirked. "Just time to pass the baton." "I built this place," I said. "Laid the foundation, poured the cement, rewired half the electrical myself when you were still in diapers. And we're grateful," she replied. Calm, collected, rehearsed. "But we want to invest in our future. It's just a formality." "Formality," I repeated, the word tasting like rust. He stepped closer, his voice dropping an octave. "It's either we get the paperwork sorted peacefully or we take the harder route. You wouldn't want that, right?" The sunlight through the window felt colder now. The walls of this house, my house, suddenly felt too narrow, too sharp. I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't recognize my own daughter. Her eyes didn't flinch. Not once. A knock came at the screen door. It was Greg, my neighbor from across the street, retired postmaster. Nosy, but kind-hearted. He was holding a rake and pretending to be out doing yard work. "Hey, Bill," he called through the mesh. "Everything okay?" Her fiancé waved, all smiles. "We're great, Greg. Just sorting out some paperwork stuff. Family business." Greg hesitated, eyes flicking between us. "Right. Okay then." He didn't move, just stood there, watching, listening. And that's when the silence turned public. The air changed. The conversation, once tucked into corners of family tension, now leaked into daylight. And in small towns, daylight meant everyone eventually knew. I turned back to them. You want me to sign this house over? It's the smart move, she said. You can keep living here, of course, just not as the legal owner. That way we can refinance, apply for joint equity. And if I say no? His smirk returned. Then we start looking at other legal avenues. Maybe get you a place better suited for retirement. Retirement. That word again. The gentle kill shot. I'm not leaving my home, I said, voice low. You won't have to, she said, too fast. If you cooperate. The pocket watch ticked louder in my chest. I reached into my jacket, pulled it out, and set it on the table between us. They both looked at it, confused. This watch belonged to your grandfather, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He gave it to me the day I bought this house. Said, let time remind you what you built matters. Her fiancé chuckled. Cute. But it's not going to stop us. He nudged the watch with his knuckle, casual, disrespectful, like it was a paperweight. I stared at her. Is this really what you want? She looked down, then back up. Yes. I nodded. Greg was still outside, still watching. The neighbor across the street peeked through her blinds. The street was silent in that eerie way small towns get when truth starts cracking through the paint. And the crack was getting louder. I picked up the watch, closed it with a sharp click, and turned away. Where are you going? She called after me. Out, I said. While I still have the keys. Out, I said. While I still have the keys. I checked my account. The balance was wrong. Not just a few dollars off wrong, like a hole had opened in the middle of my life and no one thought to warn me. The savings account I'd built over 30 years, piece by piece, was nearly drained. My hand hovered over the mouse, too stunned to click refresh, as if seeing it again might somehow fix it. But there it was. Nearly $42,000 gone. My breath tightened. I scrolled through the transaction history, floral vendors, cake deposits, a luxury sedan rental, and a payment to a high-end photography studio I'd never heard of. The wedding. They used my account to pay for their wedding. The room swam for a second. I gripped the desk, trying to ground myself. The watch ticked faintly in my pocket, its rhythm almost mocking now. I clicked further. There it was, her name, Amanda Parker, listed as a cosigner on the account. A joint access form had been filed online 2 weeks ago. I never approved that. They forged my digital signature. I stood up so fast the chair nearly fell backward. My head pounded as if my body were trying to keep pace with the betrayal. The last transaction had gone through yesterday, the morning of the wedding. That meant when I was polishing the pocket watch and ironing my shirt, they were finishing the job, emptying me out. My chest burned not just with rage, but humiliation. I'd funded my own public execution and smiled through it. I stormed into the living room. She was curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't stolen anything. Her fiancé wasn't home, probably out spending the remains of what used to be my future. Who gave you access to my account? I asked, standing in the doorway. She didn't even look up. We needed it. Everything was under pressure. The florist doubled the quote. You forged my signature. At that, she glanced up. It's not a big deal, Dad. It's not like we took it. You paid for my brother's wedding. That was with my permission. Exactly, she snapped. And you'd have said yes if we asked. But you're so tense lately. We didn't want to fight. You didn't want to ask, I corrected, my voice sharp. Because you knew what the answer would be. She stood now, arms folded. We had to make decisions quickly. It wasn't personal. It was always personal when your child made you a stranger in your own bank account. I built that account with overtime shifts, with graveyard hours, with your mother gone. It was the only backup I had. It's not like you're broke, she said, shrugging. You still have your pension. You live here rent-free. And you're always going on about legacy. Well, this is legacy, investing in family. Legacy. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the watch, and held it up. This, I said, is legacy. Something passed with permission, with honor, not stolen behind a login screen. She rolled her eyes. Oh my God, it's a watch, Dad. No, I said quietly. It's a promise. Something your mother wanted handed down. But you turned it into theater. She sighed. Like I was the burden. It's just money. We'll pay it back. You can't repay trust. At that moment, her phone lit up. A text preview flashed. Cake vendor confirmed cancellation refund takes 30 days. I caught it in the corner of my eye. She didn't bother to hide it. Refunds? I asked. So now that the wedding's off, you're what's scrambling for receipts? We're managing it. You used my money, Amanda. Without permission. That's not managing. That's theft. Her mouth opened, closed. She had no retort ready this time. I want your name off my accounts, I said flatly. Today. Are you serious? Deadly. Fine, she said, tossing her phone on the couch. We'll fix it. But don't act like you didn't owe us this. You've been living in the past since Mom died. We needed someone to step up. I did step up, I said. Every day, every night, every time you fell. But this is the first time I realized I wasn't your father anymore. I was just a wallet. She looked away. I didn't wait for more. I turned, walked back to my room, closed the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the pocket watch. Its hands ticked forward, stubborn and precise. I remembered winding it as a boy, amazed that something so small could hold so much weight. Now it was the only thing in this house that hadn't lied to me. I placed it on the dresser, beside a framed photo of her at age 10, wearing her mother's earrings, smiling without suspicion. Back when things still made sense. Now it was the only thing in this house that hadn't lied to me. Before we move forward, don't forget to subscribe and tell me, if your child stole from you, would you forgive them or walk away? My plate wasn't set that night. Neither was my place. The dining table, once the heart of our family, had 2 candles burning gently in the center, one on each side of the roasted chicken. A bottle of wine stood unopened, a corkscrew beside it like an invitation I never received. Amanda and her fiancé were already seated, laughing. Her fork was in midair when I walked in. "Oh," she said, not surprised, just mildly annoyed, like a waiter had interrupted. "We thought you were working late." "I live here," I said quietly. She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned toward him and whispered something. He laughed under his breath. I looked at the table. 2 plates, 2 sets of silverware. No third. "I can make something quick for you," she offered, not getting up. "There's some leftovers in the fridge. You can heat them up." I stayed frozen in the doorway. The watch in my pocket suddenly felt like it was ticking against my chest in Morse code. "Leave, leave, leave." He poured her a glass of wine, then filled his own, held it up. "To freedom. To freedom," she echoed, clinking glasses. I stepped forward. "Is there something I should know?" He didn't even bother looking at me. "Yeah, sit down. Let's talk." Amanda sighed. "We wanted to do this later." "No better time than now," he said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. She reached under the table and pulled out a manila envelope. Thick. Weighted. "We talked to a lawyer," she said. "A housing attorney." I didn't take the envelope. "We'd like to offer a path to transition," she continued. "You've been under a lot of stress. This house is too big for you. It's not safe anymore." My voice didn't rise. It dropped. "Safe for who?" "For all of us." He jumped in. "Look, we're not kicking you out. We're proposing a shift, maybe a senior community. Something closer to your old work buddies." "You're evicting me from my own home." "No," Amanda said. "We're giving you time to adjust. 3 weeks. I paid this house off before you were born." "You did," she said. "And that's why we're offering to help you relocate. We'll cover some of the moving cost." I didn't take the envelope. I took out the watch instead and placed it quietly on the tablecloth. They both stared at it. "It's just a watch, Dad." I ignored her. "This was given to me by your grandfather the day I closed on this house." He said, "Time reveals who earns their place." Her fiancé scoffed. "Then I guess it's time for new names on the deed." My throat tightened. Not with rage, but something colder. Final. Outside, the porch light flicked on. A motion sensor. Greg's dog must have passed by again. I wondered if Greg was still watching through his blinds. Amanda pushed the envelope closer. You don't have to read it now. Just think about it. I opened the flap. Inside was a formal notice, legal phrasing, citations, an offer for assisted relocation, a draft agreement with my name on it, typed, not handwritten. They'd been planning this. I need air, I said. Don't do anything dramatic, she warned. I didn't answer. I took the watch from the table, placed it back in my jacket, and walked to the front door. As I opened it, a cool wind blew across my face. September air, the kind that smells like something dying beneath the soil. I stood on the porch, hands on the rail, eyes on the empty street. The quiet wrapped around me, not peaceful, hollow. They were inside, clinking glasses again. He said something loud, made her laugh. I couldn't hear the words, just the tone, triumphant. I looked down at the porch light above me. It flickered once, then steadied. I stepped back inside, walked past them, past the table, past the wine. I'll be gone in 3 days, I said. Not 3 weeks. Amanda stood. What? That's not what we meant. No, I cut in. It's what you meant. You just didn't expect me to agree. He opened his mouth. I turned to him. Don't. You've said enough. I went to my room, closed the door, locked it. Then I took out the suitcase. I packed slowly, deliberately. My clothes, my toothbrush, the framed photo of Amanda when she was 7, beaming at her school recital, the one where she still believed I could fix anything, and the watch. Always the watch. I placed it gently in a small cloth pouch, folded it twice, slid it into the side compartment. They thought I would beg, that I would plead, that I'd crawl. Instead, I smiled and reached for my suitcase. They thought I would beg. Instead, I smiled and reached for. The zipper on my suitcase sounded louder than any goodbye. Morning crept in without ceremony. No footsteps down the hallway. No smells of breakfast or clink of dishes. Just the low groan of my old house waking up without me in it. I rolled the suitcase out from under the bed, slow and steady. The wheels creaked on the hardwood floor like they didn't want to leave either. My room looked smaller now, emptier, despite the years layered into the walls. The photographs, the books, the chair by the window where I used to read while Amanda did her homework on the floor. It all looked like a memory someone else had lived. I packed a few shirts, a winter coat, my shaving kit, then the photo, Amanda, 6 years old, with missing front teeth and chocolate frosting on her chin. I tucked it deep in the side pocket, like maybe it still meant something. And the watch? Always the watch. I opened its lid one last time before I left. The ticking sounded louder this morning, less like time passing, more like time warning. I slid it into the cloth pouch, then into the inner lining of my coat. When I opened the bedroom door, I moved slowly, not because I feared them, but because I didn't want them to matter anymore. They were at the kitchen table again, eating toast. 2 cups, no third. He looked up, smirked. Going somewhere? Amanda's eyes flashed, for a moment hesitation, maybe even regret, but it vanished fast. You said 3 days, she said. I changed my mind, I replied. No drama, no shouting, just silence thick enough to choke on. He raised his coffee mug. Don't forget your meds, old man. I didn't answer, just rolled the suitcase past the living room, through the foyer, to the front door. As I opened it, the sound of birds chirping felt sarcastic. Greg was across the street again, pretending to rake leaves that didn't exist. His eyes met mine. He gave a small nod, and that was the first spark. The moment the community saw something was off. I walked past Greg without a word, but the message traveled faster than breath. By the time I reached my truck, parked at the curb, the blinds in 2 houses had already shifted. People were watching. And not just watching, whispering. I loaded the suitcase, slid into the driver's seat, and took one last look at the house I had built from studs and sweat. A place that now belonged to strangers wearing my last name. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I drove. 20 minutes outside town, I pulled into the parking lot of the Rosepine Inn, an old roadside motel with green shingles and rooms that smelled of pine cleaner and lost dreams. Room 12. The woman at the front desk didn't ask questions. She handed me a key with a chipped plastic tag and said, "Breakfast ends at 9. I didn't unpack, just sat on the edge of the bed and listened. Tick, tick. The watch kept perfect time. I looked around the room, simple, beige, quiet. The kind of place you come to when you're between something you built and something you no longer own. I opened my phone, turned off the ringer, and tossed it on the nightstand. An hour later, it buzzed. Then again, and again. By noon, there were 5 missed calls and 2 texts. From Greg. "Hey Bill, everything okay? Saw you leaving with bags. She said you were going to assisted living. That true?" There it was. The lie. Already posted. Already shared. Already planted like a weed in the middle of my name. I didn't respond. Let the silence grow. Let it do the talking. By evening, I walked down to the gas station diner across the lot. Ordered black coffee and a slice of apple pie. The waitress called me "Sir" and asked if I needed sugar. No one knew who I was, and for a moment, that was relief, but not peace, because I knew what was coming. Small towns don't like quiet exits. They fill the silence with stories, and I could already feel the hum building back home. Amanda would paint the picture. He would sign it. They'd say I was losing my mind, becoming paranoid. They'd spin it clean. But one thing they didn't know, I still held the deed. And the power. Back in the room, I pulled out the watch again, wound it carefully, set it on the nightstand beside the photo. Tick, tick. It didn't blink. It didn't lie. It didn't betray. The next morning, while the town believed their story, I opened my laptop and saw their mortgage payment waiting. 1 click, 1 silence, 1 storm. The next morning, while the town believed their story, I opened my laptop and saw their mortgage payment waiting. By sunrise, I held their mortgage in one hand and the watch in the other. The motel room was still dark when I woke, the curtains twitching with early wind. I didn't turn on the light, just sat at the edge of the bed with the weight of betrayal still fresh on my chest. My laptop blinked on, casting pale blue across the room. Their mortgage account was open, my name still primary, my payments still active. They didn't think I'd do it. They thought I'd leave quietly, let it slide, let the house go like some worn-out coat. But they forgot who signed for it. I hovered over the button that read, "Cancel Auto Pay." My finger trembled not with doubt, but with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. A click wasn't just a cancellation. It was a declaration. Click. The screen refreshed. Next payment. Blocked. A low, hollow laugh escaped my throat. I hadn't laughed in days. Not since the wedding. Not since the moment my daughter told me no, showed me that I was no longer welcome. I opened the second tab. Joint insurance account. Their cars, their health, their renter's liability policy, all covered under a plan I had set up when Amanda moved back in. I remembered signing the forms after her fiancé lost his job last year. Just for now, Dad. We'll take over next month. Click. Remove authorized users. Amanda Parker. Deleted. Harrison Brooks. Deleted. I leaned back in the chair, watching the screen go blank where their names used to be. My watch sat beside the keyboard, ticking in rhythm with my breath. Its face looked cleaner today, less smudged. The way a man looks clearer once his house has been cleared of liars. I kept going. Banking app. Grocery card. Deactivated. Monthly $600 transfer. Stopped. I even removed their names from the family cell phone plan. Line by line, click by click, I reclaimed what they'd mistaken for a gift. It wasn't charity. It was loyalty. And they had severed that. Now I was just severing what followed. By 8:45 a.m., I had a pot of motel coffee brewing and a printed copy of their wedding invoice list on the table. I circled each item they had paid for using my money. The venue, the bar tab, the damn cake with 3 tiers I never tasted. Then I folded it, slid it into a new envelope, and wrote 2 words on the front. Balance settled. I didn't mail it. Not yet. I wanted them to feel the absence first. By mid-morning, the motel room was quiet again. I walked across the parking lot to the diner. Same stool, same waitress. Back again, hun? She asked. Just settling into routine, I replied. You in town for business? Something like that, I said, stirring my coffee. Family business. She smiled, not pushing further. I like that about small-town places. They'll gossip when you're gone, but they give you space while you're present. When I got back to my room, I saw the first ripple hit. My phone lit up. Amanda. Dad? Did the mortgage bounce? The bank just called me? A minute later. Amanda. Are you okay? Why is the car insurance canceled? Then. Harrison. What the hell are you doing? We have bills due today. I didn't answer. I turned the phone face down on the nightstand. I leaned back in the chair, breathing slower now, lighter. 30 years of building, 30 years of providing, and in 2 weeks they had turned it into a theater of control. Now I was pulling the curtain down. The motel room smelled faintly of old soap and carpet cleaner, but in that moment, it smelled like freedom. I picked up the watch again, ran my thumb across its face. My father once told me, you don't take revenge with rage, you take it with silence, with absence. I didn't yell. I didn't call. I just stopped paying. By nightfall, their phones would ring, their bills would bounce, and my silence would be deafening. What would you cut off first if your kids betrayed you money, name, or home? Tell me in the comments. Missed calls climbed like debt. By Wednesday, there were 12. By Friday, 22. I didn't answer a single one. The motel room phone buzzed too, even though I hadn't given out the number. I guess they called the front desk. I unplugged it after the 3rd attempt. Silence wasn't just a punishment, it was a message. The more they reached out, the more they proved how much they needed what they'd thrown away. The pocket watch ticked calmly on the nightstand, the only sound in the room, a steady metronome of patience. On Thursday morning, I walked to the diner again. The same stool, the same waitress. You look lighter today, she said, refilling my coffee. Drop some weight, I replied. She laughed, but I didn't. The waitress turned toward the kitchen, and that's when I heard it. A voice behind me. Is that him? That's the father, right? I didn't turn, just sipped. They say he left everything, just walked out. No explanation. The voice faded. Another customer chimed in. No, she pushed him. Over some wedding money or something. Rumors had bloomed fast, and I wasn't the gardener. But I didn't need to be. Back at the motel, my phone buzzed again. Voicemail this time. Amanda's voice tight, uncertain. Dad, we're in trouble. The mortgage payment bounced, and Harrison can't get through to the bank. They said something about account ownership. Can you please call me back? 10 minutes later, another message. The insurance too? Why are you doing this? You're scaring me. Then silence. For 6 hours, nothing. Until sunset. Another voicemail. This one softer. More cracked. Dad, if you're mad, I get it. I shouldn't have done it that way. But please, just talk to me. We can figure it out. It was the first crack in her voice. The first note of regret that didn't sound like performance. But I didn't call back. Because regret isn't apology. It's reaction. I sat in the room, surrounded by silence that I had chosen. The same room that once smelled like loneliness now felt like peace. Across the parking lot, I saw the gas station cashier close early. A small sign hung on the door. Funeral. Tomorrow closed at 6 p.m. I wondered who passed. Not that it mattered. I had already buried something this week. That night, As I wound the watch, I thought of Amanda's last message, the way her voice dropped near the end. A pause, a plea she wasn't used to offering. She had always been good at asking when she knew she'd get a yes. But now she was learning the cost of no. Friday morning, the motel lobby TV played the local news. I wasn't paying attention until I heard the name of our street. A minor police report. Domestic complaint noise disturbance. Verbal fight. No arrests. But the names? Amanda Parker and Harrison Brooks. I stared at the screen as the anchor moved on. The unraveling had begun. By noon, another text. We lost power for 2 hours. Thought it was a fuse, but turns out the payment bounced. Can you just fix it? I didn't. She tried calling again. Voicemail. Then another message. Short. You're really not coming back, are you? Still, I said nothing. Because this wasn't about me being gone. It was about them finally being seen. The motel bed creaked as I sat down. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the envelope I hadn't mailed yet. Balance settled written across the front, still sealed. I thought about sending it now. But no. They hadn't earned silence as closure. They needed silence as exposure. Around 4 p.m., I took a walk around the block. Small town roads, a few nods from strangers, a boy riding a bike with a lopsided helmet, a woman sweeping her porch who glanced up at me, then looked again like she thought she knew who I was but couldn't quite place it. That's the funny thing about walking away from a name. People don't recognize your face anymore. That night, I ate alone again. Same pee, same coffee. But this time, I didn't feel hollow. I felt ready. Back in the room, I clicked the watch closed, leaned back in the chair, and whispered to no one in particular. They're not panicking because I left. They're panicking because I finally stopped giving. They're not panicking because I left. They're panicking because I finally stopped giving. Through the peephole, I saw my daughter and a stranger beside her. Her fiancé stood stiffly at her side. Arms crossed, jaw tight. She knocked again. Softer this time. Dad, I know you're in there. The motel hallway behind them buzzed with flickering fluorescent light. A maid's cart squeaked nearby, the scent of bleach and overused pine cleaner floating in from the open service closet. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at the watch in my hand, wound it slowly. Tick, tick. They knocked again. I opened the door, but not fully. Just enough. Amanda's face was pale, tired. The arrogance that had built her silence earlier was now replaced by something unsteady. He looked the same, impatient, defensive, like he was late for a meeting no one invited him to. Can we come in? She asked. No, I said. She blinked, surprised by the coldness. She shouldn't have been. Dad, please. We need to talk. We are. He stepped forward. You're ruining us over a tantrum? I looked at him. You know what's ruining you? The assumption that my silence meant surrender. Amanda exhaled. We didn't come to fight. Then you should have brought truth, not him. His jaw tightened. This is between all of us. No, I said. This is between a father and the daughter who erased him. He's just a side character. He scoffed. You think money gives you the right to manipulate everyone? No, I said calmly. But it gave me the right to stop being manipulated. She looked like she might cry. But not quite. Why didn't you just tell me you were struggling? I asked her. Why steal? We weren't stealing, she started. I pulled a folded paper from the small table inside the room and held it through the doorway. A printout. From my banker. Funny, I said. Bank says someone tried to apply for a $50,000 equity loan last week against my house. Her lips parted. I turned to Harrison. The same house you toasted over as ours now. He didn't deny it. Wasn't approved, I continued, because I froze the equity line the night I left. Amanda turned to him. You told me that was a refi estimate. You said it was for us. I said it was paperwork, he snapped. You didn't want to handle it. Her face cracked. There. That was the moment. The first betrayal she felt on her own skin. I stepped back. The motel hallway felt colder now. "We can fix this," she said quietly. "We didn't mean for it to go this far." "Yes," I said. "You did. You just didn't expect it to fall apart." The motel door across the hall creaked open. An older woman in curlers leaned out, curious. A man at the vending machine turned his head. Public fallout, just like before. But this time, I wasn't the one caught off guard. Harrison leaned against the doorframe now, defensive again. "You think people care? You're hiding in some rundown motel acting like a martyr." I smiled. "And yet, you showed up at my door." Amanda's voice cracked. "Please, Dad. We're in over our heads. We didn't mean to lose your trust. You didn't lose it," I cut in. "You traded it. For money, for control, for pride." She swallowed. "What do we do now?" I looked at her. "You live with your choices." Harrison stepped forward again. "If you don't help us, I'll go public. I'll tell the town you're unstable. I'll make sure they believe me." Behind him, the motel clerk from the lobby rounded the corner with a clipboard. He froze when he saw us, then nodded, kept walking. "You already tried that," I said. "And the town's not buying it." He smirked. "You sure about that?" I leaned in just enough that he could hear me and only him. "The banker you tried to scam? He's my old fishing buddy. The one who called me the minute your loan request hit his desk." His face changed. Just enough. Amanda backed away a step. You knew? From day one. And you didn't tell me?" "I wanted to see how far you'd go." The vending machine whirred as the man behind them punched in a code. Amanda turned toward me, eyes softer now. "I didn't know. I swear. He told me it was routine." "That's your mistake," I said. "You trusted someone who never built a thing. You turned your back on the man who built everything." She looked down. The silence felt heavier now. I didn't let it linger. "You should leave," I said. "Both of you." Harrison sneered. "You think this is over?" "No," I said. "I think you're over." He didn't have a reply. Amanda took one last look at me. Her voice dropped. "Are you ever coming home?" I didn't answer right away. I closed the door halfway. Let her see the watch ticking on the nightstand. "Depends," I said. "Will it be a home, or just a place you left your father behind?" And then I shut the door. "Depends," I said. "Will it be a home, or just a place you left your father behind?" The sheriff didn't knock. He posted. I watched from my truck, parked 2 houses down, as Deputy Latham stepped onto my front porch with a yellow envelope in one hand and a roll of blue tape in the other. Standard procedure, no contact, just notice. He read the label once, peeled the tape, and pressed the envelope flat against the glass door. 1 square of tape. Centered. Legal. Final. Then he turned, nodded toward my truck, and walked back to his cruiser. I didn't wave. Neither did he. We'd already spoken that morning. 2 days earlier, I sat across from my lawyer in a small office that smelled like tobacco and dust. Henry Wallace. 62. Quiet. No small talk. "You sure you want to go this route?" he asked, flipping through the folder I handed him. "My house, my name, my signature," I said. "They forged, they spent, they threatened. I just want clarity." He nodded, pulled a pen from his coat. "Clarity comes with paperwork." An hour later, we had a motion filed for temporary protective possession, essentially a legal freeze. Harrison and Amanda could not sell, refinance, or legally occupy the house until a hearing. A preliminary injunction would follow. Henry added a layer of legal teeth, a cease and desist for harassment, digital or otherwise. "I'll loop in the sheriff's office," he said. "We'll deliver it with presents." I signed everything in silence. The weight of the pen didn't match the weight of what I was reclaiming. But the pocket watch ticked steady in my jacket like a second heartbeat. Now, as I watched the yellow envelope flutter against the glass, I imagined their morning. Amanda would walk into the kitchen in her slippers, hair still tangled with last night's regret. Harrison would still be fuming about the motel standoff. Pacing, then she'd open the door and see it. A single square of blue tape. Holding a future they no longer controlled, I drove away before I saw their reaction. I didn't need to witness it to know it hit. Instead, I drove to Wallace's office again and dropped off the second folder copies of all the forged bank changes, the wedding invoices, the account access logs. He flipped through them like a priest reviewing confession. "This isn't just about eviction," he said. "No," I replied. "It's about accountability." He nodded. "They'll lawyer up." "Let them," I said. "I'm not afraid of truth." At the motel, I returned to room 12, where the air now smelled like coffee and old wood. I opened the envelope the sheriff had returned to me, proof of service, dated, filed. Then, I opened the cloth pouch. The watch slid into my palm with a quiet kind of power. I set it on the table, watched the hands move forward, always forward. My phone lit up again. This time, not with a call, with a photo, sent from an unknown number. It was my front porch. The yellow envelope had been torn down, shredded, and in its place, someone had written across the glass in what looked like lipstick, "This isn't over." They'd made it public now, but so had I. Because I sent the same legal packet to 3 more addresses. The church, where Amanda still volunteered on weekends. The bank, where Harrison tried to pull a second loan. Greg, my neighbor across the street who'd once called me paranoid, then called me brave. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was drawing the line. That evening, I received one final call from a number I hadn't saved but remembered well. Harrison's former boss. "Bill," he said, "I don't usually call about personal matters, but Harrison listed your house as proof of financial stability on a business grant application. That's still accurate?" "No," I said. "Didn't think so." He hung up. I leaned back in the chair, watched ticking beside me. They hadn't just stolen money. They'd tried to mortgage my name. Now they were watching it come undone. They hadn't just stolen money. They'd tried to mortgage my name. Now they were watching it come undone. The florist's door slammed, and with it, so did the town. I didn't witness it firsthand, but the story reached me before lunch. A friend of mine, Marla, from the Rotary Club, texted me after her niece saw Amanda trying to return unused wedding arrangements. She was crying, the text read. They told her no refunds. Harrison yelled, "People were watching." Small towns have their own social currency. It doesn't get wired, it gets whispered. By noon, Amanda's job had also posted a staff restructuring memo online. Her face was no longer listed under events and client relations. And Harrison, he was photographed leaving the bank in a suit that didn't quite fit. Face flushed, mouth set, like he was biting back something foul. Greg forwarded the photo from the Community Bulletin Board's Facebook group. Caption read, "Things catching up with folks, huh?" It was starting to happen. Not because I forced it, but because lies only stretch so far before they snap. I sat on the motel bed, watch ticking beside me, reading every new thread unfold in silence. This time, they weren't gossiping about me. They were watching them burn. That afternoon, I drove through town, not to spy, not to gloat, just to exist where I used to belong. The coffee shop where Amanda once brought me Father's Day muffins now had 2 women whispering near the window. They paused as I passed, then nodded. Respect returned quietly. At the hardware store, the clerk handed me my change with both hands, eyes steadier than usual. "You doing all right, Mr. Parker?" he asked. "Better every day," I said. He nodded. "Folks been talking. Some people finally seeing what you saw. Not pity, not drama. Recognition." I stopped at the gas station. The same clerk from 2 weeks ago didn't blink when she rang me up. "Room 12 still holding steady?" she asked. "It island. You holding steady too?" I smiled. "Closer every hour." At sunset, I pulled into a different parking lot. The community center. There was a support group inside a small one. parents, mostly retirees, people who'd been used, misunderstood, pushed aside. I didn't plan to speak, just listen. But halfway through, a man shared about his son took his savings, forged his name for a car loan, and then vanished. I gave him everything, the man said, and he left me with less than nothing. I raised my hand. I know what that feels like, I said. Heads turned. No judgment, just shared ache. I told them about the watch, about the wedding, about the moment my daughter said, "Don't come near me." When I finished, no one clapped, no one cried. But the silence after was the kind that held weight. "I wound the watch that night," I said, and realized it still worked, even after everything. An older woman across the circle spoke next. "Maybe that's what legacy is," she said. "Something that keeps time after lies run out." I nodded, and felt, for the first time in weeks, like the world hadn't ended, just narrowed to truth. Later that evening, my phone lit up again. This time, not with a message, but a tag. A public one. A local boutique had posted a warning. "Due to a recent dispute involving stolen accounts and unpaid invoices, we are updating our policy. Full payment required before event bookings." Amanda's name wasn't in the post, but the comment section didn't need to guess. People knew. And then the florist chimed in. "Some clients forget loyalty isn't just flowers and vows. It's how you treat the people footing the bill." No one defended her. Not one comment. I read through each reply slowly, sipping motel coffee gone cold. One line stood out. "Maybe her father knew more than we thought." They weren't just losing money. They were losing cover. The world they built on polished photos and high-end vendors was cracking, and every piece that fell revealed something uglier underneath. Their text messages shifted tone. "Amanda, people are saying things that aren't true. We never meant for it to explode like this. Harrison, this is on you. You brought your dad back into it. No more unity. Just blame. Just collapse." I wound the watch again before bed. Carefully. Slowly. Its ticking was clearer now, like it knew it had outlived their illusions. I placed it next to the sealed envelope again. Balance settled. I still hadn't sent it, because their collapse wasn't about the money. It was about the cost of underestimating a father. Because their collapse wasn't about the money. It was about the cost of underestimating a father. The church pew creaked behind me, then silence, like even the hymnals held their breath. I hadn't stepped into street Maribel's in 6 months. Not since Amanda insisted I rest on Sundays while she and Harrison took my seat, my role, and eventually my name in prayer requests. But this morning, I walked in with my back straight, the watch ticking gently in my coat pocket, and a quiet resolution pressed into every step. Heads turned. Whispers followed. Not loud, just deliberate, controlled, like the sound of a match being struck behind glass. I took my old seat on the third pew from the front, right side. The wood still held the groove of my shoulder from years of leaning forward during the choir's final chorus. The pastor glanced up mid-sermon, faltered a moment, then continued. He knew. Everyone knew. Because 2 nights ago, someone had sent the legal documents redacted but clear to the prayer chain email. The unspoken request for Amanda became a not-so-unspoken caution. I didn't send it, but I wasn't sorry it spread. The sermon today was on forgiveness. Of course it was. Pastor Benjamin read from Matthew, his voice calm, but it trembled slightly when he reached the verse. "And if thy brother trespass against thee 7 times in a day, and 7 times in a day turn again to thee, saying, I repent, thou shalt forgive him." Someone behind me muttered, "If he repents." Another whispered, "If it's real." The congregation's silence had become acidic. You could taste the judgment in the air. Amanda wasn't there today. Neither was Harrison. But their absence said more than their presence could have. At the close of service, the choir rose for the final hymn, "It is well with my soul." The congregation stood. I stayed seated, not out of rebellion, but because I needed that moment to hear the words to feel their weight, to let the music move through the parts of me they tried to hollow out. When the final chord faded, I stood slowly. The watch ticked in my coat pocket, like it was keeping pace with the church clock above me. 1 second older, 1 second stronger. Outside, on the front steps, I saw them, 2 older women from the church board, clutching their purses and whispering like schoolgirls. One of them nodded at me. The other said, "He's here every Christmas, never caused trouble." Another man, someone I didn't know well, but who used to shake my hand after services, stepped forward and said, "Good to see you back, Bill." Then unexpectedly, a teen from the choir offered me a folded piece of paper. "I thought you might want this," he said. I unfolded it. It was a printed bulletin from last month's wedding service, the one I never got to stay for. Inside, beside the program schedule and the verse Amanda had picked, "Honor your father and mother," was a handwritten note. "You should have stayed. It wasn't the same without you." No signature. But the handwriting was Amanda's. That must have been printed before the eruption, before her voice cracked the hall, before she turned away. I folded it carefully and placed it inside the cloth pouch with the watch, not because it was forgiveness, but because it was evidence. Later that evening, I sat on the motel bed, bulletin in one hand, the watch in the other. I thought about what it meant to forgive someone who hadn't asked, what it meant to remember love while holding betrayal in the same hand. The truth is, fathers don't forget. We archive. And I wasn't done building the record yet. At 8:22 p.m., Greg called. "She's been going around, Bill, crying at the pharmacy. Told Judy she didn't know the house would be frozen, that Harrison's name was just for emergencies." "She's still protecting him?" I asked. "Barely," he said. "But she's not protecting herself either. She's unraveling." I didn't say anything. Greg added, "The town's on your side now. I haven't heard one person defend what they did." I looked out the motel window at the pink dusk bleeding into the sky. "They're not mad at her," I said. "They're mourning her." Greg paused. "Yeah," he finally said. "That sounds right." Before bed, I lit a small motel candle, one of those cheap tea lights that flicker weakly but stay lit longer than you'd expect. I wound the watch, clicked it shut, and placed it on the nightstand beside the bulletin. I didn't need to say anything out loud, because tonight, the whispers were working in my favor. I didn't need to say anything out loud, because tonight, the whispers were working in my favor. They thought the house was theirs until the notary confessed. It happened on a Wednesday, just after lunch. Henry Wallace, my lawyer, called with a voice thick with satisfaction. "You might want to sit down for this," he said. "Your son-in-law forged your name on a quitclaim deed. We confirmed it this morning." My stomach didn't drop. It rose. "I knew it," I said. "We got the notary to talk. Said Harrison told her it was a surprise gift. Just needed a signature on file. She swore she'd seen your ID. Turns out, he used a fake one. Bad one." I sat on the motel bed, holding the phone with one hand, the pocket watch in the other. Tick, tick. "How do we proceed?" I asked. "We file for deed nullification and felony forgery. I already prepped the motion. Once it hits the court, the sheriff will serve Harrison directly." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "Thank you, Henry." "Don't thank me," he said. "Thank the notary's sister. She saw the wedding fallout post on Facebook. Put 2 and 2 together. Loyalty comes from strange places." 2 hours later, the paperwork was filed, sealed, stamped. The sheriff's car pulled up in front of my house by dinner time. This time, I stayed parked across the street, in Greg's driveway. He offered me a beer, but I declined. I didn't want to drink. I wanted to watch. Amanda opened the door. I saw her flinch when the badge appeared. Harrison stepped forward, arms stiff, voice raised, but the sheriff didn't blink. Just handed over the envelope, spoke clearly. "You've been served under Section 27 to 18 for fraudulent conveyance of property. You are not to alter, access, or list this property in any transaction moving forward. All prior changes are considered null." Harrison's face went white. Amanda leaned against the doorframe like the wind had been kicked out of her. Greg said nothing, just took a long sip of his beer. Later that night, back in the motel, I opened the envelope I had refused to mail for weeks. Balance settled, still written across the front. I slid in a copy of the court filing, then sealed it again. The pocket watch ticked beside it. And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was fighting for dignity. It felt like I had restored it. Amanda texted at 9:41 p.m. You knew. You always knew. Yes, I thought. And you still let him sign. She followed up. Was it ever about the house? I didn't reply. Because it wasn't. It was about betrayal. The house was just the mirror. The next morning, Harrison's employer revoked his grant application based on the forged property deed he used as collateral. Word reached the Chamber of Commerce by noon. By evening, Harrison was no longer employed at all. Community leaders knew. Vendors blacklisted him. And Amanda? She called once. Didn't leave a voicemail. Just silence. I imagined her standing in their kitchen, looking at the spot on the wall where my framed veteran's certificate used to hang the one Harrison replaced with a wine rack. I wondered if the frame left a mark. That night, I laid the court order next to the wedding bulletin and the watch. 3 truths. 3 pieces of who I was and who they tried to erase. I didn't need to win back respect. I had never lost it. They had just tried to sell it for parts. They didn't just lose the house. They lost the blueprint to ever build trust again. She didn't knock this time, just waited outside the motel like someone waiting for judgment. I saw her through the slatted blinds, arms folded tight against her chest, shoulders hunched like the wind had something to say. Amanda looked smaller now. Not because of the weather, because of the weight. I opened the door slowly. Said nothing. She didn't speak right away either. Just looked at me, then past me, like trying to measure the distance between who I was and who she remembered. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She walked in like the room might break under her feet. The pocket watch ticked on the table, loud in the silence. She sat in the chair I'd always used. Funny, that seat used to mean nothing to her. Now, it was the only place she could rest. I read the court document, she said finally. It's over. The house is yours again. It always was. She nodded. No defense. Just a slow surrender. Harrison left, she said, packed 2 bags and blamed me for everything. He didn't take the lies with him? She gave a sad smile. He left them on the counter. I read every one. Then she pulled something from her purse. A small cloth pouch. My father's watch. My father's handwriting still faint inside the lining. But it wasn't my watch. It was the second one, the replica I had given her years ago, after her college graduation. You gave me this, she whispered. Said, don't use it to tell time. Use it to measure how you treat people. I nodded. I didn't treat you right, she said. Silence. Then, I don't want the house. I don't want the money. I don't want anything you don't want me to have. That's a long list, I replied. She didn't flinch. I deserve that. I looked at the real watch on my table. Still ticking. Still alive. Then I opened the drawer and took out the envelope. Balance settled, still written in ink that hadn't faded. I handed it to her. She looked confused. Inside, I said, is what's left. I withdrew what you never spent. It's yours if you can meet the condition. What condition? I reached over and laid the watch on the envelope. She stared at both. Whoever keeps this watch clean, keeps the name. She blinked. The name? My legacy. My inheritance. The right to say you come from something that was built, not borrowed. Tears welled, but she didn't cry. Not this time. You want me to earn it back? No, I said. I want you to protect it. If you can't, pass it to someone who can. Give it to a stranger, a vet, a child. I don't care. But don't carry it if you're going to wear it like decoration. She nodded slowly, both hands cupped around the envelope now. I understand. She stood, but I wasn't finished. One more thing, I said. You don't get the house, but you can keep the key. She looked up. Not for entry, I added. For memory. To remind you what it cost to try and change the locks on your father. She walked out quietly. No hug. No apology parade. Just a woman who'd been handed grace but told it comes with guardianship. And that's what she left with. Not property. Responsibility. That night, I cleaned the real watch with a cloth and placed it back in its case. Legacy wasn't what you left behind. It was what you left alive. Legacy wasn't what you left behind. It was what you left alive. They didn't cheer. They stood. When I walked into the town hall that evening, gray suit, polished shoes, the real pocket watch, ticking steadily in my breast pocket, no one clapped. But they stood. Every seat filled. Every eye turned. Every whisper paused. Not for spectacle. For respect. The mayor's office had requested a recognition ceremony. Something light. Something community-driven. They called it civic gratitude for contributions to local legacy. I didn't care for the title, but I came anyway. Not for applause. For clarity. The pastor opened with a prayer. Greg spoke next. Told the crowd about the time I paid for his brother's funeral when no one else could. That was 2 years ago. I had forgotten. Then Marla stepped up, said, "Some legacies are built in silence." But we heard him loud and clear. I kept my hands in my lap. The envelope Amanda had returned, still sealed, rested inside my coat. I hadn't opened it. Didn't need to. Because some things, when returned, don't need to be inspected. They need to be believed. Then the mayor nodded toward me. "Mr. Parker, if you'd like to say a few words." I stood slowly. The pocket watch ticked louder in the microphone than my own breath. "I'm not much for speeches," I said, "but I do know how to say thank you." A pause. I've been called a lot of things in the past month. A burden, a relic, an obstacle. I looked across the room. Not a single pair of eyes looked away. But I'm also something else. Another pause. A builder. A father. A man who doesn't run from silence, but walks through it. The pastor nodded. "I didn't cancel a wedding," I continued. "I canceled my erasure." A murmur. "I didn't leave a house. I left behind a demand that dignity can't be inherited. It has to be protected." And then, slowly, I reached into my coat and pulled out the pocket watch. Held it high. "This watch outlived their lies," I said. "Because it was never for telling time. It was for telling truth." I placed the watch back in my pocket. And the crowd stood again. Not because they had to, because something in that room shifted from gossip to grace. Afterward, a woman from the library came up to me. Said, "I heard your daughter returned the envelope. That true?" I nodded. "She also returned the other watch," I said. "The one I gave her when she still believed in what it meant." "And now?" the woman asked. "She's starting over," I said. "From zero." Which is sometimes the only place truth fits. As the room cleared, Greg handed me a folded piece of paper. "From Amanda," he said. Didn't want to interrupt. I waited until the parking lot was empty. Then opened it. I set the replica watch on my desk. Haven't worn it yet. Not because I'm ashamed. Because I'm learning how. If I ever do it right, you'll know. I folded it gently. Placed it inside the envelope. Didn't need anything more. That night, back in the motel for one final sleep, I packed my bag. The room smelled like the end of something. But not death. Release. I wound the watch one last time. And whispered. They mocked it as junk. Now it outlived their lies. Father walks away from town hall. Crowd watching. Watch ticking. Head high. No words needed.